What is one thing that is holding you back from negotiating? Or maybe asking for something that you've never done before? Like, for example, becoming a manager without having prior management experience. Or maybe applying for a role that you don't have all the qualifications. Well, if I had to distill it to one thing, I would say it's fear of failure. And today I have a pleasure speaking with Merve Hokamp, and she's an executive coach with years of experience in Google and other companies. And we're going to talk about just those things. We're going to talk about leadership, we're going to talk about negotiations, and she's going to share some tactics about how to fail or not be afraid of failure and be able to negotiate for what you deserve. Merve's background is very interesting. She's originally from Istanbul, Turkey, and she lives in Dublin 12 years and counting, as she says. She studied in France, in INSEAD, and also in Singapore and in the US. And she shared at least one very interesting exercise that I think you can try today, the 10 no's exercise, and it will change how you ask for what you want without being afraid of being a failure or failing. So tune in to listen to this episode and get what you want. And hi everyone. Welcome back to From a Woman to a Leader. I'm Limor Bergeron-Gross. I'm your host, and I'm a former director of engineering. I have over 20 years of experience working in tech, and as a woman in tech, a lot of times the only woman in the room, I know the challenges that women face in the tech industry, and for the past 5 years, I decided to dedicate myself for women and support women in their career growth and have more women in executive roles. And that's also one of the reasons why I started this podcast, because I want to help you and also bring to light all the incredible women out there that can share, be a role model, and share their stories. So I'm super excited for this episode today, and I hope it will help you to learn some practical tips and take control of your career. So what are you waiting for? Let's dive right in. Hi, Merve. How are you?
Hi, Lamar. Good to see you. I'm good.
Good to see you too. I'm very happy that we got a chance to talk.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely, me too. And before we dive into negotiations, I want to kind of share with the audience your story. I think it's very inspirational because you're originally from Turkey and you now live in Dublin and you're married to an American and like you moved quite a lot. So can you share like briefly your story?
Yeah, I have a confusing multicultural story. But yes, I'm originally from Istanbul, Turkey, born and raised to a purely Turkish family. But it was my dream to see the rest of the world, I suppose. So I did travel a bit. I studied in the US, in Austria, in France, Singapore, and I also worked in a few different places around the world. I eventually landed in Dublin. That was over 12 years ago with my husband, who's from Texas, US. We actually met while we were studying abroad together in Austria, and our two kids, who are Turkish and Irish and American. So we still live our multicultural lifestyle here.
This is incredible, and I'm always very inspired by people like you that are traveling the world. What's the secret? I mean, I've moved from to the US and got back here to Israel, but it's like I look at you and like, wow, you've done so much. What's the secret for that?
I don't know if there is a secret or if it's that glamorous, really. I mean, as I said, it was my dream. And so to me, it was really meaningful to be able to travel all around and meet lots of people from different cultures and even in environments that we have lived in. And in Dublin as well, we try to cultivate that multicultural environment through our connections and our friends. I think the secret is, I know it's really easy to say, but it's just do it. I think, sometimes I just pack a bag. Now I have two small kids. Obviously, it's harder to travel. But my husband's very supportive. I have built a support system around that because it is important to me. And so I do travel by myself with my friends. We just did a book club trip to Rome, for example. It was dreamy, so good. The food, oh my God, and the people. But it was, it's hard because then my husband has to take both kids and, we don't have our families aren't here. So but we do it, and then he does the same thing, and then sometimes we even escape together and we travel as a family. So we've just said that that's not something that we will give up on. There's many other things that we make compromises on, but this one isn't one. So as hard as it is sometimes, or it might be expensive, it might just not be convenient, we just kind of do it because it adds that extra level of zazz, if you will, to our lives.
For sure. I think it also opens your mind.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I also want to cover like some of your professional kind of background. I know that you worked at Google and you have done leadership roles. So can you share a little bit, because I know in Google, like you moved from IC to management, and I know a lot of our listeners also doubting whether management is the right thing for them, and if so, how to do it. So can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely, yes. So I was at Google for 11 years before I left to build my own business. I started in management consulting, then I did an MBA, then I was at Google. So when I started, I think I had about 5 years, almost 4.5, 5 years of work experience. And then, of course, I had my MBA. I started as an individual contributor in a junior enough role. And I think it was amazing because it was really educational. I learned the field, and it was really good to get in and learn about the product. It was Google AdWords at the time, Google Ads now. Talk to the clients, really kind of feel that buzz, if you will. And that's one of the actually pieces of advice that I give to people, that, okay, if you want to be on the management path, that's amazing. And it's really good that you already know that you're really intentional about it. There are things that you can do there, which we can talk about later, around that intentionality of it. But first things first, really, really understand the role, really, really understand the field, really, really understand the product or the suite of products, so that when you do become a manager, you're somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, or you're somebody who actually has had that experience to then be able to speak their language, to then be able to support the people who are doing the field job. So that's what I did, and again, it was amazing. But I think it was at the 2.5, 3 year mark, when I decided, I had also gotten promoted. I decided that it was a good time for me to lean into management and team leadership. And in my current team at the time, there were no roles. And so I decided to look out. There also was a reorg, a restructuring of sorts, which often is kind of off putting, or it might be a little bit stressful for people. So it certainly was stressful. But then I asked myself, okay, can I rise above this and see this as an opportunity? So kind of saw it as an opportunity to move to a team that was also reorged, but was looking at certain different positions and had some other positions open. And I built relationships with them, and then I was able to land a role as a team leader there. So that's how my leadership career at Google started. And then since then, I had, I think, 4 or 5 different leadership roles in different product areas and different functions, leading different teams. So
Yeah.
it's been a great experience.
That's incredible. I mean, I think one of the things I very much relate to what you said, like it seemed like there was, a reorg or things that went sourly or went the wrong way. And many people interpret that as like, oh my God, bad things happen. And they start kind of griping about it. And my God, I don't have any opportunities. Other than thinking it, like you said, like differently of where is the opportunity here? What can I do?
Yes.
Because there are always opportunities.
Absolutely. I mean, that's definitely something that I believe in, and that's something that I try to do in my coaching today with people that they might come with lots of challenges, and it's really good. Of course, that's the first step. What are the challenges here? What are the problems? What's the problem statement? We need to figure out what it is that we're having a problem with or that we're trying to overcome to be able to then, think about solving it or think about turning it into an opportunity. But don't stay in that space, maybe would be would be a good advice. Once you've identified the problem, once you've thought through the challenges, think about, okay, well, what are the opportunities, as you say, or what are some chances or open doors that I can walk through from, or closed doors that I can push a little bit gently to see if they will open for me. So I think that's something that sometimes we're all human, we all do it, that sometimes we have a hard time going into. We tend to stay in that challenge, problem, my God, why me space sometimes.
For sure. And I think one of the things I see a lot, especially with women, is that we wait to be handed something rather than take. Meaning, I'm not saying like take forcefully, but take in a sense, like you said, being intentional, navigating your career to something, looking for opportunities, getting from the door, from the window, or trying to push the door a little bit, like trying to be more proactive and a little bit more assertive and resourceful in the way you navigate your career rather than just being passive and saying, oh my God, those bad things are happening and no one is giving me a leadership role. There is no opportunity for me. What can I do? Like, do you
Absolutely.
relate to that?
Absolutely. Sometimes we call that the victim versus player mentality or mindset. We might think I'm the victim here, so I'm passive, things are happening to me, versus being a player would be, what can I make happen? How can I change this? Or how can I own this? So it's that control zone. What can I control? And what can I then proactively, as you say, do about the situation that I'm in right now, or do with the situation? Maybe use it even as a tailwind to springboard into whatever it is that you want. So that's definitely something that I see. And you are right that I think women, for good reason, maybe even for historical reasons, we tend to try to stay in our shell and do great work and then wait to be discovered. Sometimes people say that they're waiting for their promotion. That's something that I'm a little bit, in a gentle way, allergic to. This is not a bus. Why are we waiting for our promotion? We should be asking for our promotion, or you should be going for your promotion. So even the verb sometimes that we use is indicative of that victim mindset, victim mentality.
I 100% agree with you. And I'm saying that over and over again all the time, to my clients, and also when I share things on LinkedIn. It's like waiting will not get you there for the most part. Sometimes it does. I'm not saying it cannot happen, but you have to be proactive about it.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to ask you, I mean, in Google, when you got kind of your first leadership opportunity, right? I mean, a lot of my clients and women that I meet struggle with, okay, how do I get into management when you actually don't have management experience? How do you prove that you are a good candidate? So can you share kind of how or what worked for you and how did you negotiate your way up into a management position at Google?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the paradox, that chicken and egg situation of people ask for management experience, but as you say, you have to start somewhere to get the experience. So if you don't have the experience, you can't be a manager, but then to be a manager, you need the experience. So, or you need to build the experience. I think, first of all, I just want to recognize, because people do tell me sometimes that there are some teams, there are some functions, there are some hiring managers who will always look for people who have management experience. And I don't really agree with that philosophy myself, because sometimes people who haven't done it before but have prepared for it, and that's what we will talk about in a minute, actually are better candidates because they're motivated, they have actually chosen that path and they've been really intentional about it, and they have taken the steps to prepare themselves for that path, and they're so excited that they will actually do a really good job. So you want to, I think, invest in people who have that will, and then certain things, if they don't have the experience, for instance, they can gain the experience along the way. If they need more skill, you can train for skill. So hire for will, train for skill. But some people we can't change, and we probably don't have the time to change. So if they're very rigid about it, then just let them be and look for a different role. Now, for most hiring managers who do have the flexibility, what they look for is, one, really that will. So how can you show that will? You can show it by the actions that you have already taken. What are some of the people management responsibilities, for instance? Mentoring and coaching. Have you mentored junior employees before? Have you helped new team members onboard? That's one of the things that I did, is I did a lot of mentoring and coaching. One, to actually see if I like it, because that is a big part of the role. Two, to gain that experience and to be able to articulate and showcase that in my interviews, in my CV, resume, etc. There's also lots of strategy and strategic thinking. So can you show that, again, I put my hand up to my manager at the time, and even my manager's manager in leadership, to say, okay, you're doing this business plan. I have some experience building slide decks from my consulting days. Can I help you with that? Because it seems like you need the help. Maybe I can help you with that, and I can just be a soldier. But then through that, I also got lots of exposure to the actual business strategy, to the actual business planning. At some point, I was in the group of managers and leaders who were working on the deck. So I was able to put my hand up and say, well, I have this idea. What do you think about this? You had said this the day before. Not to, give it direction, but certainly pitch in as well. And so they were able to see that I have those leadership qualities myself as well, to then be able to give me more roles or more responsibility. I think the last thing maybe I might say that really helped me was to build relationships and have a network of people who can sponsor me, can advocate for me, can maybe refer me or tell the people who are making this decision of taking a chance on me, to say that I'm worth it. So sometimes people say when I talk to them, well, I don't want to manipulate anybody, or I don't want to ask somebody to tell their friend that I'm actually worth it or something. But no, it's not like that. It's just more that you showcase your skills, and then they tell them this person will add value to your team because they have these qualities. And so if they can vouch for you, it's a win-win really for everybody involved. So those are my little tips.
You mentioned so many great things, and I think that advocating, getting allies and sponsors and people to advocate for you is so important. I mean, that's how I got my first management position, right? I mean, I had someone who really recommended me because they knew me. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And you also mentioned building relationships, both with your manager, with skip level, with stakeholders, so they can get to know you. And you can do that even if you're not a manager, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's that adding the value, as you say. They know you. They know that you add value. You're not really going around doing visibility for visibility's sake. We sometimes say that that's the peacock approach, right? I don't go into my skip level manager's office and open my feathers and just kind of say, here I am. It's more that here's the value that I can offer. If it's helpful to you, can you also talk about it with your network so that they know that I have something to offer them too?
Sure. And you can add value no matter what your role is. I mean, I think that one of the challenges that women face, at least I'm not saying only women, but we're waiting for someone to give us the permission to do things.
Yes.
And I realized during my career that I don't need to ask for permission. I mean, if there are things I can help with, I can just do it. I can just go and help. And as you said, you can come to your skip level and give some ideas or help with a presentation or do something that is maybe out of your job.
Mm-hmm.
Give value You're not stepping on anyone. You're not kind of running over people, right, on your way to the top. But still, you're maybe stepping outside the boundaries of what your role is supposed to be.
If that's something that you're interested in doing, it helps you build the relationship, it helps you gain experience. It's really helpful and, as we said, win-win for everybody involved.
Absolutely. So I want to encourage you all, those who listen, I mean, try to find opportunities to give value. And I always believe, as you said, we're not peacocks. I like that. I like that analogy. Like, not just show, oh, I'm here, but actually give some value and build those relationships. And I want to kind of touch the negotiation piece a little bit, not just in related to promotion, but in general. And I know that women, as women, we feel very uncomfortable. At least I can share. I felt very uncomfortable about it. Like, it doesn't matter if it's like salary, promotion, or anything else. Like, I felt uncomfortable. Can you share a little bit what have you seen? Men versus women, and what you think is going to work for us women comes to negotiation?
Yes. I definitely notice trends. I work with women and men, and that I am a coach, so they would come to me with challenges. And if we're talking negotiation, oftentimes there's some sort of challenge. So if you think about my data set, they all feel uncomfortable. So we start from a common ground, and then they diverge. So women often will say it's about them. So they might say, am I good enough for this role? Do I have the right to ask for that raise? Do they have space for me at the boardroom, or the management table or the leadership table? So it becomes more about self-worth and how they can prove themselves, or whether they should even dare or have the audacity to ask in the first place. That's the area of challenge commonly. Men, on the other hand, will look to the other person, the people who might or might not give them this opportunity, and also the environment. So they might say, do they have space at the leadership table? So it's more about not space for me, but do they actually have space for one more person? Obviously, it would be me if they were to welcome one more person, but do they have space? They might look at market dynamics. If they're going to negotiate a salary, then they're more interested in thinking about the MRP, the market reference point, for example. If they are going to negotiate a position, they're more interested in looking at what the industry wants and if there's space in the industry or in the market for that position, as opposed to, again, do I have the right qualifications? Am I going to be able to be good enough in that interview? They're more interested in dynamics and data and market and the other person or the people who are making that decision. So that's the top differentiation, I think, that I see between how women approach negotiation and the challenges thereof versus men.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned like self-worth, your confidence, am I good enough? Well, I think some of it, not all of it, but some of it stems from comparison to others. And I'm not as whatever as this person. I'm not as experienced. I'm not as assertive. I'm not as whatever it is. Instead of thinking, how am I different? What are the things I bring? What are the values I bring? How my unique skills and values are
Yeah, definitely. I think you make a good point there. It's a bit of what we might call imposter syndrome. We tend to, and by the way, statistically and by research and studies, they show that it is the highest performers who have imposter syndrome. So if women have imposter syndrome, then they must be really high performing and high achieving. But nonetheless, it does block us, right? So they feel like they're imposters. They feel like, oh, I fooled these people. I'm not fill in the blanks enough, as you say. I'm not good enough for this. I'm not assertive enough for this. This isn't for me type of thing. Whereas somebody else does have more experience. So that self-doubt, that comparison does creep in. What we might, as you say very well, what we might look at is, how are you different? How are you unique? What are your strengths? What are your values that you bring into this mix, into this role? And how are you the best person for this role? I sometimes, when I do little mock interviews or practice interviews with people, will ask them that question. They might not ask it that way in the interview, but why are you the best person for this interview? And then, again, men, it's a big generalization, but men maybe laugh and giggle for a second and then they say, oh, because of, they're able to articulate. Whereas women, they kind of, it takes them their breath away. And I ask them that question, they're, I wouldn't say best, but I'm good, because they kind of immediately self-deprecate and go into that quote unquote modesty mode. But you can be a modest person, humble person, and still talk to the strengths and the value that you bring into a role, because this is a business transaction. I'm going to give you all of this, and as a result, you're going to make more money, you're going to have more customers, whatever it is that the role is. You will actually benefit from it, hopefully in an amplified way.
For sure. And I think you mentioned a very important point here about being humble and versus bragging. This is another thing that I hear a lot. I don't want to brag.
Yes.
And I think that you need, in some ways, you need to brag. Maybe not brag, but you need to show that you're confident in yourself and your abilities. Because think about it, if someone interviews you for a role, or even internally, if you are trying to justify why you deserve something, and you said, well, maybe, there are other people that are good, I'm not the best, but I'm doing, rather than saying, well, those are the things I'm really good at, those are the values I bring, and showing that you're confident, that you know what you're talking. This is so important. It's not just what you do, it's how you present yourself.
It's a societal thing. I think women, little girls, are told to, stay in their shell a little bit, be modest, don't be too shiny, don't draw too much attention to themselves, because threats can come and danger can come from that. And I think, again, for a good reason, and it's extremely unfortunate, we won't get into it here, but I think that's kind of how women and girls are raised. And so that's why we think that it's bragging. There's the story that my yoga teacher told us once to demonstrate this that I love. And she was saying, we were in the yoga studio, she was saying, okay, if there was a leak, a pipe leak right now, and the studio was flooding, and one of you was a plumber, and you were so modest that you didn't want to brag, and so you didn't want to say, I'm a plumber, I know how to fix this pipe, I can fix this, don't worry. You didn't want to brag. Then we would all be in danger, basically, maybe even dead. But if you actually are to say, look, everybody, we have a problem, I know how to fix it because I have the skill set, then we're all saved. What is it going to be? So obviously it's a bit of an exaggerated story, but if you're a plumber, please tell me that you're a plumber, because I might avail of your services and of your strengths. You're actually doing me a favor telling me what your strengths are and what your skill sets are, because I might be able to put them to good use to save my business, to save my life.
This is a very interesting analogy, but yeah, I see how it's making the point. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would say another thing, because neither of us is perfect, and when you look at, like, even you and me, let's look at you and me. We are both coaches, right? And someone can ask, okay, is Merve a better coach than Limor, or Limor is a better coach than Merve? It's not about that. Such as we're both coaches, and each one of us brings her own experiences, and each one of us has her own passions, and each one of us has her own unique skills and areas where we bring value to others. We don't always have to be better than someone else. I think that men are more competitive, like I'm better than this. We don't have always to be better, rather like this is me, this is what I bring. And I think I'm a very good fit for that.
Yeah, it's additive, I think. As you say, people are unique. They bring their unique skill sets and strengths. And then also it's additive. If we bring your coaching skills and my coaching skills and somebody else's training skills and somebody onto the table, then we can make that pie bigger as opposed to try to grab a slice of a small pie. So I think that's how I think of it, is that win-win situation, that if we bring all of our skill sets onto the table, then everybody wins and the pie is bigger and the output is actually larger and hopefully more impactful for the world.
For sure. I want to make sure that we get to that before the end of the episode. So share with our audience some negotiation tip they can take away, like something that they can, a technique or something they can use to become better negotiators.
Yeah. There's so many. One of the exercises that I love to do in my programs is one that I actually learned and did as a participant in business school. It's called the 10 no's. So it kind of maybe addresses, or it's there to address all of these things that we talked about: the imposter syndrome, the self-doubt, the comparison, the fear, the anxiety behind, I'm going to go into a negotiation and what if they say no? Or I'm going to go into a negotiation and what if somebody else is better than me? I'm going to go into all of this stuff. So the exercise is very simple. You go out there. Oftentimes I give people a week, sometimes 2, depends on the setup, and get 10 no's. So you ask for something, hopefully audacious. Those are the ones that make the best stories. And you seek a no. Through the exercise, very interestingly, every time it doesn't fail, they realize that it's actually a lot harder to get no's than they think. There are people who were able to score business class upgrades on flights, presidential suites at hotels. There was a person who got a disco ball from some bar at 4 a.m. in the morning because they said that they really needed that disco ball. And like hilarious stuff. Obviously, these make for the best stories. And then at work too, of course, there are people who got salary raises because they asked, and they weren't even going to ask, but they were doing this exercise. One of my coachees got an invite into an incubator. She's a startup, so incubator program, a startup accelerator program at Stanford. So really prestigious one, because she had asked for an investment from this guy who was really well connected and said that he doesn't invest in early stage startups. So no, but I can invite you to this accelerator program because I'm really impressed with you and I'm really impressed with your business and this would be perfect for you. And obviously it's a privilege. It's hard to get into the program. So oftentimes it's very hard to get a straight no. Oftentimes it's actually a yes, and you would be surprised. And sometimes it's a no, but, or no to that, but yes to this kind of a thing. Like in this story of the fundraising situation, no, I can't invest because you see, I don't really invest in early stage startups. However, yes to this thing, which I think will really help you get to a point where I can maybe in the future invest into it. There are also people who actually get the no's. Of course, the exercise and the challenge is 10 no's. So oftentimes people do come back with 10 no's. Sometimes they can't do the 10 no's, but oftentimes they do. And then again, it's much harder than they thought. They come back with lots of yeses. Sometimes they also realize if something's a no, then it's good that they got the no because they then just kind of get over it. It's
Yeah.
the more no's that you get, the less that blow, I guess, that you feel, the less rejection, anxiety you feel. And you might look at it a different way. Sometimes people say, well, this person said no, and they were also really rude. So I actually don't want that from that person anyway, because I don't want
Yeah.
to be working with that person. So again, not to say, oh, let's all be Pollyannas here and always see the silver lining or anything, but it kind of does give you that perspective of, well, do I want this in the first place? Or they said no, so what? the world didn't stop. I didn't, fail or go bankrupt. It's the world still goes on. Things are still in business, and we're still on to something, and I can ask somebody else. So my tip is to take yourself less seriously. I think this is one exercise, kind of a fun one, to get yourself into that state of mind that kind of says, you know what, I'm just going to ask.
For sure. And I have a fun story, actually. I just remember it when you shared the tip. It's a wonderful tip. I mean, I think it's a muscle, right?
It's a muscle.
To ask and not be afraid of rejection. I was in London in the summer with my two girls. And my younger one, she's 14, and we ate Indian food. We love Indian food. It was a spicy meal. So my daughter, my youngest, she drank a lot of water. Before we left the restaurant, she went to the bathroom. And off we go, wandering the streets of London. And then after 10 minutes, she said, Mom, I have to pee real bad. And we're like in the middle of the street. There's literally nothing there. Like just wandering around. I didn't know what to do. And I saw a bar. And this like a real like English bar. And I don't know what to do. I mean, she's 14. She's not allowed to get there. And I said, you know what? The hell with it. Like she needs to pee. And I just walk into the bar and I go to the bartender. I said, listen, I have a serious problem here. I have a girl who have to pee. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to pee in the street. And the bartender is just so nice. She said, I'm not allowed to get her, but let's just slip her in real quick. And that's what we did. And I'm like, you just ask, right? The worst they can say no to you. Before that, I went to an office building that I thought there are more chances that they will agree. It was just an office building, and they said, no, we cannot get anyone in here. And then on a bar, I didn't expect that they will let her in.
Yeah, you just need to ask. And you may have, met somebody or run into somebody that at the bar in London, and sometimes there's also stories like this that that little incident led to this thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think just ask, and then if they say no, so what? And then if they say yes, I think just let serendipity happen.
For sure.
Let things position yourself well, and then let things flow. I think it's a great story.
Yeah.
I love a good, tourist needing the bathroom story.
Yeah. Women in bathroom, like girls in bathrooms. I mean, we always need to pee, at least me. So before we go, it's a wonderful conversation and we can talk for hours about negotiation. But I want to make sure that people kind of know how to reach you and find more about you.
Yeah, so my website is leadrisecoaching.com. That's also the name of my business, my third child. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn too, so people can find me on LinkedIn. It is LinkedIn/in/Merve, MERVE, Hokamp, HOKAMP.
Perfect. So Merve, I will share both your website and your LinkedIn profile. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Limar. This was a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening for the episode with Merve. Before you go, I want to give you a sneak peek into next week's episode. And next week, I'm sitting down with Emily Van Putten. Emily is a cybersecurity expert and an DEI advocate, and she has an incredible story. In the episode next week, she shares her inspiring journey, including her transition into cybersecurity. But she also shares her personal experience as a transgender woman navigating the tech world. We'll dive into her amazing story with Dutch women in tech and how she's helping women enter and thrive in cybersecurity. So if you are curious about creating an inclusive workplace or want some practical tips for making bold career moves, this episode is definitely for you. And before you go, if you like this episode, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And also share it with a friend that you think it can be valuable for. Also, I want to encourage you to head over to my website and subscribe to my newsletter to get weekly updates. See you next week, and thank you so much for being here today.